Hello and welcome to Teaching Through Repertoire. This is Russian Music Box, the second violin part played on a cello. This piece is written by Newbold. It's a fantastic piece for anyone who's in their first or maybe even second year of playing as they're getting used to playing in an orchestra and hearing the sounds all around them. There are 5 parts in this piece, so when you're learning your part, you're just part of the puzzle. Couple of things that you're going to notice in this tutorial. Number 1, I'll go through everything that you might not recognize with your eyes. Number 2, I'm going to play the entire play-along track at the end of this tutorial with a metronome going so you can hear a steady pulse as you're practicing. All right, so if you're ready, get your instruments up. Here is Russian Music Box by Newbold, Violin 2. What you're going to notice right off the bat is that you start with pizzicato and you have the word div, which is short for divisi, which means if you're in an orchestra, there are 2 people who share one stand. There's a designated outside person and a designated inside person. The outside people play the top note, the inside people play the bottom note. So that's how divisi would work. Now, depending on who you are, where you are, and what orchestra you're in, you might all be playing the top note, you might all be playing the bottom note. Make sure to talk to your director to see which one you're supposed to play. But for now, I'm going to only play the top note because this is supposed to be divided. You'll notice it's rest, play, rest, play, rest, play. The most challenging thing about this is keeping track of how many you've done and making sure you don't go too fast, which is called rushing, or too slow, which is called dragging. We want to keep the music moving at a very consistent speed. So if you look from measure 1 all the way to measure 11, it's the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, rest, play, rest, play, rest, play, rest, play. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very repetitive, but it sets the stage for the melody to be played on top and for it to get thicker later on when all of you pick up your bows at measure 11. At measure 11, you have arco, and this is a pretty tricky feature for a string player. You have to go from pizzicato in measure 10 to arco in measure 11. There's a couple of options. One, you can hold your bow like you're going to play it, but just extend your first finger. That's one way to do it, and that way it's very easy to just be ready to play with the bow. If you've been taught to hold the bow like this when you do pizzicato, that's also a perfectly acceptable way to do this. However, you've got to be a little more crafty when you switch back into arco mode. So if you're going into this version of pizzicato and this version of arco, you can see, even though I'm pretty quick, it does take a little bit of time. And if I try to play F sharp, it takes a little bit of energy and effort to train my body to allow my hand to move that quickly from one to the other. So there's one other solution. Don't play the final note in measure 10 so you can get ready for measure 11. The music in measure 11 is going to be very clear for our audience to hear, so we want to make sure that everybody is on time and that we land together at measure 11. So whether you just extend your first finger or you go rapid supersonic speed between your pizzicato hand and your bow hand, or you drop the final note, those are 3 options for you to get from measure 10 to measure 11 correctly. Now in measure 11, we do arco. Arco's with the bow. So we place our bow on the string and we make this beautiful full sound. You might notice I'm using a lot of bow. My arm is very flowing, my shoulder is opening, my elbow is opening, my wrist and my fingers are very relaxed. If you feel very comfortable reading these notes, terrific. Focus on your sound and what sounds are coming out of the instrument. Are they short and crunchy? If so, think about using more bow and relaxing your shoulder. We usually use too much strength on string instruments, so make sure that you're thinking about how much strength you're using, and I bet you it's too much. If you look at some of the challenges for the left hand, going from open A to F sharp is kind of tricky. Because it's a string crossing and you have to throw your fingers down on the D string. So here's what I recommend. Instead of playing just open A, practice playing open A and F sharp at the same time. And that trains your hand to get to places a little bit before they need to get there. It's kind of like going to an appointment. You always arrive a little bit early so that you're ready when they call your name. Make sure you train your left hand so you're just a little bit early so that when the bow gets there, you're all set to go. You'll see I'm playing open A, but my F sharp's already there. That way I have a clear sound immediately. immediately. Looking ahead, you have an interesting rhythm to manage here. In measure 14, this is a big deal if you're a younger musician. When you're trying to hold 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually what happens when we're less experienced with the bow is we move the bow too quickly and we run out of sound, which is one of those things that we want to make sure to avoid. So in measure 14, you'll see it's a whole note, which means you have to sustain it for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, to do that, you might want to add a little bit of arm weight. You might want to move a little bit closer to the bridge, and then you can slow down your bow so you can make sound the entire time. We don't want this 1, 2, 3, 4. Because soon Newbold wrote a whole note, so she wants sound that entire time. Looking ahead to a note that you might not remember, in measure 15, that is open D down to first finger A. Open D, and then in measure 17, that's high second finger B. All right, now that is the melody that you get to play with the violins and the violas. In measure 19, you have kind of a counter rhythm. It's very peaceful, it's very legato, it's very smooth. Make sure to relax the knuckles in your bow hand and try to connect every note to the other. What's nice is that most of the notes are E, D, and F sharp, but she does throw you one curveball. In measure 22, that's first finger E, open D, and then roll your hand down and get ready for high second finger B. Okay, this might be the first time you've seen this, so take a look at measure 25. You'll see a large black horizontal bar with the number 2 on top of it. That's 2 measures of silence. So you hang out and you count to 4 2 times in the rhythm of the piece. So if this is our pulse, then I count like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. You want to make sure you're keeping track of how many beats of silence there are. We don't count like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's just not what we do. Make sure you organize it by measure. So you're going to count to 4 2 times. Then looking at measure 27, you get this big heroic moment, but it's not easy. You have first finger B down to third finger G. That's tricky. Low second, and then we have C sharps. Crossing back to third finger G. First finger B all the way to high D. String crossing to F sharp. These are huge leaps. So when you're practicing, I suggest doing this. Play B and play G. Try playing them at the same time. And then just play that measure until you feel comfortable. Looking ahead to measure 29. G and B again. If you do good practicing, you'll have already practiced that hand frame. Third finger G to first finger B. And then you have your high D ready. It's always important to figure out what's hard about each individual measure and then just focus on that, come up with a solution, practice it until you're comfortable, then you can move on to the next project. Looking all the way ahead to 34, we've seen this music before. Divisi, pizzicato, and quarter notes and quarter rests. Rest, play, rest, play. Measure 36, this gets interesting. You have a full measure rest. When you have the rectangle that hangs from the 4th line, that is a full measure rest. 4 beats of silence. Then you start your melody in measure 37. Now, what you might not be able to tell in your practice room is that everyone else starts in measure 36. What we have here is a round. They start, then you start. But when you're practicing on your own, you won't get to hear that because you're just in your practice room, making sure that at 37 you're making the most beautiful sound possible. All of the things you learned at measure 11, same concepts at 37. Slightly different notes, but you want a nice, beautiful, full sound. You have to sustain your whole note for 4 beats, and then in measure 44 you have high second finger B. 45, your eyes might get a little bit confused because you're going to see 2 notes stacked on top of each other. But you already know what to do, don't you? Yeah, the outside people play the top note and the inside people play the bottom note. That's right, you've been paying attention. Nice job. That's exactly right. You're going to focus on one line or the other, either the top notes or the bottom notes. Check with your director to see which ones you will be playing. Looking all the way to 53, what's that again? Pizzicato. When you play second violin or viola, you do a lot of arco and pizzicato exchanges because composers like to use you to fill the texture of everything around the melody. It's a pretty great job. All right, that's everything on this page. I'm going to do an entire playthrough, and what you're going to hear in the background is called a metronome, and I'm going to set it to 120 beats per minute. When we have 120 beats per minute, that means that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's a measure. I'm going to play with that metronome. I'm going to count out loud, and I'm going to play the second violin part. You ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, measure 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, measure 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. With your bow 11, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, measure 19, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 27. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 36. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 39. 1, 2, 41. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 45 top line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 53, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, all done. And that's Russian Music Box by Newbold. I hope that you're able to utilize this tutorial to learn a few ideas about what you're trying to practice, and then use the play-along track just to hear the counting with the metronome and following the music through, so you kind of have a practice buddy. Now, one of the nice features about YouTube is you can change the playback settings. You can make it go faster. You can also make it go slower. So if the tempo I did today was too fast for you, that's okay. Go slower. You do you. You got this. I'm proud of you. Thanks for trying. And remember, if you practice every day, by the end of the year, you will be taller.